But with all of Alcibiades' words and deeds, he intermingled exorbitant luxury and wantonness. He wore long purple robes like a woman, which dragged after him as he went through the marketplace. His shield, which was richly gilded, had not the usual ensigns of the Athenians, but a Cupid holding a thunderbolt in his hand. The sight of all this made the people of good repute in the city feel disgust and abhorrence. From Plutarch's Lives. Hi, I'm Emily Maeda, and welcome to Hot Takes on the Classics. Today, I'm joined by my friend Tim McIntosh, who is going to lead us through Plutarch's Lives in this season on war. So, Tim, who is Plutarch?
Plutarch is one of my favorites. He is a historian, and he's best known for a collection of parallel lives. And what that means is Plutarch loves to write short biographies, like 20 or 30 pages. And he'll write a biography of one great man from the ancient world, and he'll compare that great man with another great man. For example, he puts Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar side by side, and then, maybe most interestingly of all, he compares the two men with regards to their virtue, their moral vigor. He has been so influential, Emily. I know that you have read him and that you love him. It's my understanding, he gets quoted everywhere, that you have seen him quoted or mentioned in a very random place recently. Is that true?
Well, two random places where it's confirmatory of your feelings about Plutarch, that he is really important. So, guess who really liked Plutarch?
Who?
Well, Juan Perón, the Argentinian dictator, loved Plutarch so much that he read it to the women that he wooed.
What?
Isn't that random? That is random. Yes. And so Eva Perón, Evita, listened to Plutarch when she was dating Juan Perón. And then he did it with future girlfriends as well. That's random.
That is really random.
Okay.
That is really
the other
random.
Place Plutarch showed up, which was so surprising. Have you watched any of Vladimir Zelensky's show that he put on about being a comedian who becomes, or a high school teacher who becomes president?
This is
Vladimir
before
Zelensky.
He became president of Ukraine.
Before he became president of Ukraine.
He did a show. He was kind of a comedian, professionally.
Yes.
No, I've never seen this.
Okay, the opening show is Zelensky as a high school teacher having a dream where two figures from Plutarch's Lives come to him and talk to him about how it is so important to have moral integrity in politics. I can't remember who it is. Maybe it's Socrates comes to him. I don't remember who shows up, but they come and tell him, like, it's so important to have moral integrity in politics. And this is what spurs the character on to running for president in the show. And it actually sounds a whole lot like Zelensky himself. So anyway, isn't that funny?
How fascinating. That is so fascinating.
Two totally different cultures, Argentina and Ukraine. There you go.
A sign of just how much impact and influence Plutarch, has exerted over the imagination.
Yes.
Right?
Crazy.
Okay, so let me just give a little bit more about Plutarch, and then I want to back up and talk about the two people that he is going to write about in today's episode. Those two people are Alcibiades and Coriolanus, two of the most famous generals in the ancient world. Let me just tell you a little bit about Plutarch. So he's a Greek historian. He lives like a generation after Christ, so AD 46 to around 119. He is, more than anything else, yes, he's a historian. Yes, he's a philosopher, but really, he's a moralist. And when you hear moralist, don't hear, oh, he's a scold. He's like some rigid, teetotaling lawyer. No, he is someone who is chiefly concerned with the virtuous life, with a life of wisdom and action.
Mm.
We'll talk a little bit about his religious and philosophical convictions, but they're kind of made up of a bunch of different ingredients. The main way to think of him as a writer of supreme giftedness that is chiefly concerned with the moral vision of human life. Now, his method was to pair two great men. The two great men that he compared that we're going to discuss today were Alcibiades, a Greek, Coriolanus, a Roman. So whenever he makes comparison, he's comparing a Greek with a Roman. Who is Alcibiades? I'll just give you a little taste by comparing him to a famous sports figure. Now, Emily, I don't know if you ever heard the name of Luis Figo.
I had a cat named Figo. Named after him.
Okay.
Not because I really know him.
Named after Luis Figo?
Yes. But I have to give credit.
So you know who he is?
Only sort of. I have lots of friends who like football. Real football.
Okay. This is great.
I had a cat named Figo.
Luis Figo was for a few years probably the best soccer player in the world.
Mm-hmm.
He's Portuguese. His club team was Barcelona in Spain.
Okay.
The biggest rivalry, I think, in professional world sport is between Barcelona and their arch rival across the country, Real Madrid.
Do you know, for a long time,
Figo,
I thought that was Real Madrid. I thought it was Real Madrid, but then I realized it was Real Madrid. Keep going.
And you're like,
oh,
Real Madrid.
Real Madrid,
Why
not Real Madrid. Okay, yeah.
Is there plastic Madrid out there somewhere?
Shows how much I know.
Luis Figo was beloved by Barcelona, won trophies with Barcelona, and then Luis Figo, while in the prime of his game, switches to Real Madrid. That is Alcibiades. That's a foretaste of who Alcibiades was. Alcibiades, the Turncoat. A great Greek general who will end up being a turncoat. Okay. Next, Coriolanus is compared with Alcibiades. Who is Coriolanus like? For me, he is like another great footballer who just retired, who used to play with the MLS for just a little bit. His name was Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Zlatan Ibrahimovic, one of the great forwards of the last half century, and he is famous for one thing. He is like one of the most arrogant professional sports players in history. He's famous for his arrogance. One time, a reporter asked Zlatan Ibrahimovic, he's Swedish, "What did you get your wife for her birthday?" And Emily, do you know what Zlatan replied? He said,
something snarky for sure.
Very snarky. He said, "I got her nothing, for she already has a Zlatan."
That's so unbelievable. So unbelievable.
He is like Coriolanus. Coriolanus is like one of the great generals and supremely arrogant, unbelievably rigidly arrogant. Okay. Those are our subjects today in discussing Plutarch.
Not giving me a lot of hope. We already talked about Alcibiades as well in our Peloponnesian Wars.
We did talk about him.
Thucydides really did not like him.
Yeah.
He's not a fan. 100% not a fan.
He's like a rock star in that he does ridiculous things, but there's something about the bad boy that gets away with it.
Right, but
this is Alcibiades.
Yeah, he's rotten at his core, right? He has a lot of...
he's rotten at his core, but he's so flamboyant. He's so over the top. He takes chances that nobody else possibly will take. And he is a great general. You can't argue with the fact that he's a great general. So,
I'm
going to go back to Plutarch, and then we're just going to compare side by side Alcibiades and Coriolanus. Okay, what else do we know about Plutarch's beliefs? Really, he kind of has this kind of stew of different religious and philosophical beliefs, and that stew serves as the entree for his strong moral convictions. Really, the only thing that he just outright objects is Epicureanism.
Okay.
He just has no time for like the life of like indulgence and luxury.
Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die.
Yeah.
He's not into that.
He's not into that. Now, we should be fair. Like, the original Epicureans were more sophisticated than just like do heroin and like meet chicks. It's like, it was more sophisticated than that. But
kind
he
of.
was not. He did. Yeah, it was
when
still
you boil
about
it
like
down. It's still sort of that.
Get the most luxury that you can.
Yeah, enjoy life while it's here.
Plutarch was probably more than anything else philosophically a Platonist. Specifically, he was a Middle Platonist. So if you're like, I don't even know what Platonism is, much less Middle Platonism. So a Platonist would be somebody who follows Plato. Now, what does that typically mean? It typically means that you have a kind of notion that our world functions best when it adheres to what is in the heavens, on earth as it is in heaven, which shows up in the Lord's Prayer, right? So this is not like a notion that is strange to Christians in any way, but it doesn't come from Christianity. Plato's notion comes, of course, from Greece. His great hero is Socrates, and Plato is like, he and Aristotle are like just the greatest philosophers to ever live. Like, it's almost undisputed.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. Yeah, so glad to hear you say that.
I have my quibbles with Plato, as we will probably get into at some later date. But I absolutely would be a fool to think that Plato is not one of the absolute greats of all time.
So glad to hear it. Yep. Keep going.
Middle Platonism is a kind of development from early Platonism in which the key belief is this: God, the transcendent being, works not directly with human affairs, but through divine intermediaries like gods and daemons of popular religion. So from this will form, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, a very popular notion that ruled 1,000 years in Europe, the great chain of being. At the top was a supreme being, and there was kind of like in a ladder cascading down from that supreme being, because the supreme being could not get messed up and polluted by actual matter.
Right, actual matter.
That would be, gross, no, impure. So there's a series of kind of like lesser beings that serve the one transcendent being. And that forms kind of like the great chain of being, from the lowest to the highest type of being.
But within Europe, you're not saying within Europe, that's still being held within a Christian notion. So there isn't the the sense of being tainted by matter, because Christ became matter. But still this understanding of going up into the highest heaven, right? It affects how the universe is viewed. The universe is viewed as the Ptolemaic universe, right? Out, gets closer to the prime mover. So Plutarch is...
Readers, if you're like listening closely, you'll notice that like Emily and I are probably not of one accord on Plato, but for another episode. He also does Plutarch. He likes Aristotle.
Really?
He also follows some elements of Stoicism, right? He can see them kind of combining. But what he's really concerned about is how to live a better life. And the best method of becoming wise and virtuous is to emulate the greats.
Which
Thus,
is
his book.
Right.
He's absolutely right.
Which is completely Aristotelian and Platonic, because Aristotle says that in his, both in Rhetoric and the Nicomachean Ethics. Like, you have to have, you need somebody to imitate, right? You need to see what this looks like.
You need someone to imitate. That's right.
You need to see what does bravery look like in action. right? In order to know
Exactly
it,
so.
you have to see it in other people's lives.
So what he does is he writes short biographies. And these biographies, for me, they really resemble in a lot of ways. Now, listen closely to what I'm saying. They're a lot like the Gospels in their form.
Oh,
So it's
yeah.
like, imagine if someone wrote down everything that Alcibiades did from the day he was born until the day he died and put it on a record, like one of those old vinyl records. And Plutarch is kind of picking up the needle of the record and just dropping it onto the record at certain key strategic moments.
Because we'd be bored out of our mind to read the whole thing.
Totally.
We don't need the whole thing.
We don't need the whole thing. We just need the select bits. And he is great at finding the right stories to tell at the right time. So he's like a painter, and his paint is anecdotes.
Yeah.
Those are the brushstrokes or anecdotes.
Which is similar to the Gospels in the sense that we don't get an exhaustive record of Christ's life, right? We get key events that also are emblematic of larger ideas.
What does the Gospel of John say? If we were to write down all of the things that
No
Christ
book
did,
could
it would
contain
fill.
it.
Right. So that's the idea, is that John's Gospel, like Plutarch's lives, are kind of dropping the needle here and there to paint a portrait of who this person was.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Plutarch enjoys an incredible reputation. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius took Plutarch's lives into the battlefield. Plutarch is quoted glowingly by the Roman Emperor Julian, by the Greek Church Fathers, by the humanists of the Renaissance. But Emily, he probably has a most famous admirer. Do you know who that most famous admirer is?
Well, I am reading notes, but I was going to say it anyway, because I knew this was the case, and I know that you love him. Shakespeare. Yeah.
Shakespeare loved Plutarch.
Shakespeare is never... Does he write anything original? Does Shakespeare write anything original? I don't think he does.
I think he has a couple. I don't know about Midsummer Night's Dream. I don't know if there's a source document for Midsummer Night's Dream.
I think there is a source document for that. But
really?
Right, he's always taking source material, and so he looks to Plutarch for some of his source material,
There's an Macbeth. Like there was a story of Macbeth before he wrote Macbeth. Okay. So Shakespeare loves Plutarch, and he writes one of his plays about one of the subjects of today's podcast, Coriolanus. But you know what? Let's start with Coriolanus's opposite, Alcibiades, the notorious bad boy.
Great.
Famous
Get the bad one out of the way.
Famous general, politician, tactician from ancient Athens. And he was so prideful and so spirited, not even Socrates could tame him, Emily. Not even Socrates.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't surprise me if you're that bad. Then you're not even going to listen to the wisest of all wise men. Yeah.
You would think, like sometimes I hear people say this, like, you know, if I could have like walked with Socrates, I would have been inspired to live a great life.
Yeah.
Well, Alcibiades did. And it's memorialized in the symposium. Alcibiades shows up for a dinner party. He's like, let's get drunk. Let's tear it up. And Socrates is like, hey, remember what we talked about. Don't
know thyself. Know thyself.
And Alcibiades is like, no, not interested. I love being buddies with you, but not interested in listening to your philosophy. So here's a quote from Plutarch about Alcibiades. For Alcibiades had, as it was observed, this peculiar talent and artifice for gaining men's affections that he could at once comply with and really embrace and enter into their habits and ways of life and change faster than the chameleon.
Wow. Not a great commendation, is it? It's really
not a great commentation.
You don't want to be a chameleon. You don't want to be a chameleon. Yeah.
From early in life. Go ahead, Emily.
Well, no, I was just thinking Thucydides has so many withering words about Alcibiades, right? And it is this very familiar persona that actually often gets a lot of adulation. Like somebody who, gaining men's affections.
Yeah.
We respond to these types of people, and it's always to our detriment, isn't it? But they do get a response because they are able to ingratiate themselves with people.
Completely. I remember my early career was spent in politics, like right after I graduated college.
I'm
sorry.
I
remember I went to a fundraiser. Yeah, still licking my wounds. I went to a fundraiser one day, and I had my little paper name badge on. Hello, my name is Tim. And this guy, a state senator, I'm not going to mention his name, comes up to me, and he looks openly at my name badge, and he comes up, shakes my hand, grabs me by the shoulder. Tim, how have you been?
Yeah.
It is so good to see you. And I'm like,
we're friends.
I've never seen you in my life.
Yeah.
But, and I knew it. I knew I was getting worked. And I still was like, gosh, he's so nice. He's such a nice guy.
It works. Because it works.
It does work.
It's so annoying to watch it happen, to fall prey to it yourself, and to watch it happen with others, isn't it? Like, come on, can't you see through this? Well, no. Alcibiades makes it a long way.
He does make it a long way. And he is aided by this fact. He apparently was a gorgeous. Luis Figo. Gorgeous. Like a stunning, almost like the archetype of masculine beauty. Here's another quote from Plutarch. It is not perhaps material to say anything of the beauty of Alcibiades, only that it bloomed with him in all the ages of his life. In his infancy, in his youth, in his manhood, and in the peculiar character becoming to each of these periods, and it gave him, in every one of them, a grace and a charm. He just was a good-looking guy. Okay, a story, Emily, about Alcibiades. This is where we're going to find Alcibiades just almost unbearable. Alcibiades had a friend, and he gets in a dispute with his friend's father, and he boxes his friend's father in the ears, right? Like a total insult to the elders of Athens. And when the people hear about it, they are completely outraged. So Alcibiades, and there's a mention of his spiritedness, right? He just has these swells of passion. Well, here's an instance of it. Alcibiades apparently just felt wrecked by insulting this man. He needed to atone for it. And so what did he do? He went to his house, offered an apology, and presented his naked body to be scourged by the man at his house the next day. The man, in turn, was so moved by this gesture that he offered Alcibiades his daughter. He was like, man, if Alcibiades did this, he's going to be a good husband. And he offered his daughter in marriage to Alcibiades. Alcibiades did, in fact, marry her. And she, in turn, was so exasperated with how flamboyant and luxurious he was that she was just like, oh, I'm so over this. But I think they remained married. Okay. Another story. Alcibiades was taken under the wing of Socrates. But apparently, Socrates had no positive effect on Alcibiades' spiritedness. And their relationship, just didn't really go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, here's a quote from the famous Greek playwright Aristophanes that expressed how people were feeling about Alcibiades. They love him, they hate him, they cannot do without him. Because he ends up becoming this incredible general. They can't do without him.
Right, they need him.
They need him.
Mm-hmm.
So, he becomes a general to the Athenian army. He's brave, he's successful. The multitudes hate him, then they love him. He has supreme confidence and charisma, and that really wins a lot of wars. But there's a turning point, Emily. There's a turning point. The
What is
Luis
it?
Figo movement.
Yeah.
A Luis Figo
Boy,
moment.
I'm just having
And
I'm having so many resonances to modern politics that I just can't even believe it.
You're feeling a little nauseated right now.
Yeah. Comparing it to current times, which I guess is what Plutarch wanted us to do. So what's the turning point? Tell me what the turning point is.
Athens, for years, had wanted to conquer Sicily, but they never thought they could take it. Guess who talks them into trying?
Well, and we already know
Our
this from
guy.
we know it from the Peloponnesian Wars, right? We know that he's going to do this, and it's going to be terrible. I'm sorry.
It's going to be terrible.
But it's not like this hasn't happened. I'm not spilling the beans. It's going to be terrible. Don't you feel that way when you're talking about history sometimes? Like, oh no,
yes,
I don't want to tell.
You see it coming.
Yeah.
A Mack truck heading toward you, and you
completely.
Yeah. So he makes a speech, does Alcibiades, and what he says is, listen, there are our friends in Sicily who will bond with us, and we will form confederacies with them. They're already in Sicily. Let's go make those bonds and take Sicily. And you know what? He wins the day. People believe his speech, and they're like, oh, let's go conquer Sicily. But here's where it starts to go wrong. Alcibiades gives this great speech, but he doesn't get to lead the war front against Sicily.
Whoops.
A friend of his, Nicias, runs the war front, and Alcibiades cannot stand this. He hates this. I gave the speech. It was my idea. And now you're going to give the generalship to Nicias? Nope, I am not interested. So what does Alcibiades do? Well, first thing he does, and we're not sure if he actually did this, but it sounds kind of Alcibiadean, he desecrates these statues of the god Hermes. He vandalizes them with a phallus. So,
oh my gosh.
Apparently even the ancient Greeks were like doing what we...
You can't be doing this.
To the god Hermes, you cannot be doing this. He makes everybody so incensed. It's a complete religious scandal. Athens charges him with impiety. And so Alcibiades is like, boy, I'm in trouble back home. What can I do here? And I'm resenting my friend Nicias. I've got an idea.
We know where this is going.
Our arch rival. Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to my arch rival. I'm going to the Spartans. And he goes to Sparta and he says, listen, I can render you aid and service greater than all the harm that I have done when we fought on the battlefield. All you've got to do is give me sanctuary. And the Spartans were smart enough to be like, we'll take you up on that deal. That's a deal. So he joins the Spartans, the arch enemies of Athens.
Isn't it so disreputable? It's so disreputable. It's like Benedict Arnold.
To make matters even worse, he is Benedict Arnold. He starts to dress and live like a Spartan.
Well, we've already been told that because we've been told that he ingratiates himself to whoever he's with.
Yes.
He has no center.
No center.
Yeah.
But all this time, Emily, he longs to return to Athens.
Well,
and when the Athenian government changes, he gets his opportunity. Yes, he gets his opportunity. So he goes to the Athenian government. He's like, listen, can we drop the charges of impiety, which would be like a really serious imprisonable offense? And can we kind of like overlook the criminal proceedings about
that I turned
me
on
joining
you?
forces with Sparta?
That I turned on you?
Right?
Oh, man.
Can we overlook that? The new government is like, man, he's so good looking. He's so smooth. He's such a great general. Come on back. And they throw a kind of solemn parade for him. But now guess what happens? What do you think the Spartans thought of him?
Yeah. I mean, but this is who he is, right? He's just living out a consistent life of inconsistency.
Well said.
Yeah.
The Spartans now, having been abandoned by him, hate Alcibiades. So the Spartan general Lysander sends his brother to Phrygia. Phrygia, Phrygia. That's where Alcibiades is living with his wife. No, not his wife, his mistress.
Of course, that fits too. It all goes together.
The Spartan troops surround his house. They set it on fire. Alcibiades is surrounded. He has no chance of escape. So what does he do? He charges out like a great Homeric hero, naked but for his dagger, and is killed by a shower of arrows. Thus is the end of Alcibiades. He went down the way that he lived. Total flames.
It's perfect. It's so great when that happens. Do you know what you could have a fun dinner party doing with Plutarch's lives?
What's that? What's that?
You could.
I'm dying to hear this.
How many examples of Alcibiades, what did you say, Alcibidean behavior, turned it into an adjective? How many examples can you find through history? Wouldn't that be fun? Because there's plenty of people like this.
Of like somebody dying like they lived.
Yeah, or just like, ingratiating themselves to, having no center and being willing to go in any direction, right? And then they die like they live. Be fun. So a fun dinner party activity could be to think about how many Alcibiades through history, Alcibiades-like characters you could name. Because there's a lot of them. There's a lot of turncoats. There's a lot of people who are just out for themselves. And how many could you come up with? Wouldn't that be fun?
Emily, that for like our historically educated friends sounds like a blast. That sounds like a blast.
Okay, that's a real nerdy thing to do. Sorry. But, I'm just thinking about all these different people who are like Alcibiades and even current day people that are like Alcibiades and, could be fun.
Alcibiades in Plutarch's Parallel Lives is compared with Gaius Marcius, better known as
Coriolanus. Okay, he's got a better name.
He was a Roman general.
That's all I have to say.
Lived. What'd you say?
I said he's got a better name.
He does have a better name. Roman general who lived in the 5th century BC. The most interesting fact about his early life is that he had no father and was raised by his mother.
Which plays
Plutarch
a prominent role
this out.
In Shakespeare, doesn't it?
Yes,
his mother
she
is
has
very
a huge
important.
role in that's right.
It's
in Shakespeare, she's a great role in Shakespeare.
Character.
She wants her boy to be the greatest of the Romans, to kind of soar with the eagles. Coriolanus, like Alcibiades,
she'd be known as a tiger mom.
She would be known as a tiger mom. She was like the proto-tiger mom.
Yes.
Yeah. He makes his reputation as a warrior, in particular in fighting Rome's enemies, the Volscians, whose capital city was Pereoli.
Oh, interesting.
That's where the name comes from. Yes.
There's his name.
Coriolanus is the conqueror of Pereoli. There's this wonderful line from the play. I fluttered your Volscians in Pereoli. Alone I did it.
Not known for
right
his,
there.
Yeah. Not known for his humility. Not known for his humility.
There's no humility in Gaius Marcius Coriolanus. There is none. But in fairness, Plutarch says that he basically single-handedly took the city.
So it was deserving.
It's hard to argue that the man is not like a great general. Say, he wins this victory over Corioli, and because of this, he gets appointed consul of Rome, a very high
Big
position.
Deal. Yep.
But to receive his consulship, he has to make a customary appearance before plebes, the lower classes. And apparently, he was to wear only a toga. Do you know why, Emily?
I actually don't. Why?
Because it was an opportunity for the plebes to see his war battles. His war wounds.
What would he have worn aside from a toga? I'm just thinking, well, of course he wore a toga.
He would have worn like something underneath the toga. But instead, he just wore the kind of like light garment over.
Okay.
Here's where it gets complicated. Coriolanus hates the plebes. Hates the plebes.
He's not ingratiating himself to the plebes.
Not at all.
No.
Eagles don't fly with crows. They fly with other eagles, and he's an eagle. So he grumbles his whole way through this customary appearance, and the plebes hate the grumbling. So they grumble back at him, and soon, because Coriolanus is so prideful, the plebes are like, you know what? On second thought,
You're
we
out of here.
withdraw our vote. You can't be a consul.
You're out of here, buddy.
You're out
of here.
So, thus far, Emily, Coriolanus doesn't sound anything like Alcibiades, does he?
Totally different. He is not interested in making himself well-loved. Not interested.
Not
right?
at all.
Not
He's
at
the
all.
opposite.
He's the opposite.
Here's where the similarity shows up.
Yeah.
Alcibiades being rejected from the plebes, his response is basically this: you're gonna reject me. Actually, I'm gonna reject you, and guess what I'm gonna do? I'm defecting to the Volscians. And to make matters worse, Emily, I'm gonna lead the Volscian army against Rome. It's amazing. It's amazing.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Hell hath no fury like a prideful general scorned.
Oh, good. That is an awesome retake on that quote. But this is
Right?
amazing. You think about, like, he had, well, I'm thinking of Aristotle's description of virtue, that it's the mean between two extremes, right? Because now he has so much pride, that he has so much pride. Alcibiades didn't have enough pride, but he has so much pride that he's going to go against his country anyway.
Yes. So, how do you think Rome takes this when they hear their arch enemies are being led into war by their greatest general? They are absolutely terrified. So, who do they send? Maybe taking a page out of Sun Tzu's book, who had it been around.
Yeah.
Diplomacy. They snap into diplomatic mode. And who do you think that they send to talk to Coriolanus on the warpath to Rome?
Well, I am going to guess that Plutarch makes a big deal about his mother, because his mother is going to come in here and, like, whip his butt.
You're exactly right.
His mother.
She meets him. But the funny thing is, I don't know that she, like, really whips him into shape. She makes a plea on behalf of his people. You are a great one.
Yeah.
Live like a Roman.
Yeah. She's saying that he in his fury is going back on his own integrity, which is probably the only thing that would reach him, right? Because he's priding himself on his integrity.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You get it. Guess what? He relents. He turns back against Rome. He's not going to charge on Rome. But now, just like the Spartans were super angry at Alcibiades for, like, turncoating on them, how do you think the Volscians respond?
Well, right. The same way, right?
The same way.
Yeah.
So he alienates his new Volscian friends. They turn on him and murder him.
But I'm going to assume that Plutarch still thinks that Coriolanus is the better of the two, because he doesn't give up he almost gives up his honor, but he doesn't do it.
Let's read what Plutarch says in his third and concluding commentary on the two men. Alcibiades would not deny that he rejoiced to be honored and was displeased to be overlooked. Therefore, he tried to be agreeable and pleasant to his associates. But the overweening pride of Coriolanus would not suffer him to court those who had the power. His ambition made him feel angry and hurt when he was neglected. These are the blameworthy traits in the man. All the rest are brilliant. He definitely sides with Gaius Marcius Coriolanus. Okay.
Who do you...
Emily, it's time for my hot take.
Who do you side with before you give your hot take? Wait. I want to know who you side with before you give your hot take. I already know, but just say it.
Okay. It is my hot take.
Oh, okay.
It is my hot take.
Okay.
Here it is. Here's my hot take. If we met Coriolanus, we would hate him. If we met Alcibiades, we would like him.
True.
I don't like to admit it.
It's
I do not like to admit
exactly
it
right.
because
You're
I have
exactly right.
just respect Coriolanus so much, but I respect him on paper. I don't respect him if I had met him like at In-N-Out Burger.
Yes. You would have been like, you are such a jerk.
And I would have.
What is your problem? You are such a jerk.
You are such a jerk.
Who do you think
you could
are?
learn from Alcibiades. Alcibiades is so warm and ingratiating. Can't you be a little bit more like Alcibiades, Coriolanus?
Yeah.
I hate it. But I think it's true.
I think you're right. I think it's a good hot take. And it's also the reason we need to read Plutarch's Lives. So it points out our deficiencies in reading other people.
That is a great point. That's a great kind of like sweetener to my very bitter hot take.
I love the hot take.
It's
That's so good.
I'm glad you like it.
So
Emily,
true.
We have reached the end of another episode. We thank all of you for joining us on Hot Takes on the Classics, your gossipy gallop through the best books ever written. Thanks to Clark Stefanik, our producer, to True North, our platform, and Tom Hagerman, who wrote and performed the music that you heard during the show. Thanks for joining us. Join us again for our next episode.